The biggest revolution of our time is not of technology like everyone thinks. It is actually of identity. Everyone is watching artificial intelligence, the robots, wondering, what are they going to do next? Will they ever be more intelligent than us human beings? But no one is asking the ancient question, the one underneath all of this. Who am I? And I'm not even talking about your job or your role as a mother or the name that your family gave you. Who are you when all of that is stripped away? Most women live their entire lives and they never even answer or even ask that question. They answer with the identity that they were handed down, whether it was through systemic trauma, religion, colonization. And that handed down identity is not who you are. And these things like technology, artificial intelligence, always become a way to distract you. Because if we can basically program you to believe you are someone than who you truly are, the highest daughter of God, then it will be easy to manipulate you. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about this week. Welcome back, Sovereign Sisters. I'm Veronica Barragan, founder of the Sovereign Sister movement and podcast, author also of Tending the Ancestral Garden, and I teach women to heal generational trauma through Kundalini Yoga therapy and the path of Christ consciousness. So if you're on this path of self-realization, welcome. Because in this community, we like to weave the science, the neuroscience, the metaphysics, so that we can all understand what our true identity actually is, because that is what it is all about. That is what I mean by reclaiming our sovereignty. And so last week, we were talking about the ancestral gifts in the podcast episode, and I shared with you where I've been in the last few months writing the book Tending the Ancestral Garden. So if you missed that podcast episode, I highly suggest you go check it out to really understand where we are moving towards this evolutionary cycle for the sovereign sisterhood movement. I'll link the podcast episode below, or you can find it anywhere podcasts are streamed as well. But one thing that we have to address is identity, because underneath all the trauma and all the gifts and all of your life experience, the only reason why you're here is to actually self-realize. And that has everything to do with identity. And identity is not just a mindset issue. Identity has to actually be addressed in the body, your identity, who you actually are, before all this programming started happening through life. And that's why I want to talk about this, especially this week, because we are entering into such an incredible time for humanity that if we are not understanding what is happening, we are not going to see opportunity. We're not going to be able to thrive, and we're not going to be able to break these cycles, because we're actually in a very exciting time where we are also able to rebuild, to recreate. And you, hopefully, listening to this podcast episode, not hopefully, I trust you don't have to rebuild yourself with anything fake, because that's exactly what gets us back into suffering. Now, before we get into this, I want to talk about what we're going to discuss, because the things I'm going to be sharing with you are, again, metaphysical but also scientific. And one of the things I want to talk about is how we crucify ourselves on an identity that was never even ours to begin with. We're going to look at how far back that identity actually reaches. And then we're going to look at the Kundalini Yoga teachings on where identity actually lives in your body, because you can talk your way out of these things. And we're going to look at specifically your navel point and the science of why you cannot think your way into a new self while your body is still bracing for something crazy to happen. And you have to understand that this is crucial, because your identity is attached or tied to the money you make, the relationships, how you eat, how you live. We're also going to discuss Carl Jung, who studied Kundalini Yoga himself and put the birth of the true self at the exact same place in the body. Then we're going to talk about something that no one wants to talk about, which is who is profiting when a woman or any human being does not know who she is, and how these systems of colonization, of pop culture, of systemic trauma. All those things run in the same path to create these same wounds. And then we're going to get to the core solutions, the sadnam, the real science of what changing your glandular system, your nervous system, your brain, how that impacts identity and how you actually self-realize as the highest identity of them all, which is the Christ within, which is what I discovered through my path of generational healing. Now, so stay with me because every section matters and every section will be explained in a way that you can apply it in your life. So let's start with how do we crucify ourselves? Because we think people out in the world are crucifying us, whether it's our Judas, the person who hurt us when we were children, when we were adults, whether it's the government, whether it's the healthcare system. Look, I'm not saying that those experiences didn't happen. But what I'm saying is that we don't have to keep giving our power to them, especially when we know who we are. So we crucify ourselves on false identities. So you were born whole. You incarnated into this body as the light, as the soul. You didn't do anything wrong, and you'll never do anything wrong. There's darkness and light. We act out of unconsciousness, but there isn't a God that sits around and just judges you all day. So the thing that happened here is you were born complete, and then somebody gave you a story about who you are. Your mother's fears became your fears. Why? Because her nervous system and your nervous system co-regulate together. Especially between the ages of 0 to 7, you're like a little walking sponge that's just absorbing everything. Your brain is just being programmed. So even your grandmother's silence becomes your smallness. So a wound that happened 3, 5, 6, 7 generations, or even a past lifetime, because there is so much evidence that there is exactly past lifetimes, right? That we bring things with us from these reincarnations, and we're not the only ones. All of us reincarnate. Jesus Christ is a reincarnation. He came to his last reincarnation and he self-realized, and that's why we're still talking about him today. And there's a lot of scripture evidence that actually proves this. This is exactly why Jesus Christ recognized John the Baptist as his teacher who would baptize him when he reincarnated as Jesus Christ, because in another lifetime, John the Baptist was actually his teacher. Elijah and Elijah. And John the Baptist and Jesus Christ are reincarnations of Elijah and Elijah. So this is why religion has always like not want to talk about John the Baptist or want to pretend that Jesus Christ is the only one that is the Son of God and that the rest of us are the scum of the earth. That's religion. That's not what Jesus Christ said. So a wound that has happened past lifetime, right? Trauma that has happened in this lifetime, you didn't choose it, right? It's an inheritance. It's actually a frequency that your lineage has been operating under. Not that they're weak, it's a program. So then you spend your entire life actually defending it. It's insane because our brains become addicted to the cortisol and adrenaline that these false identities produce, like I'm not good enough, always going to be abandoned. So instead of our brain choosing what is going to make us feel good, our brain chooses, oh, you know what? I'm just going to choose that toxic relationship again because it needs that adrenaline kick. It needs that cortisol kick. So then you spend your entire life defending it because we defend the identity we know even when it is hurting us. We're used to it. So what we carry is older than this lifetime many times, past lifetimes, and then we feel a fear that many times we don't even know what it's tied to. So it's not important for you to figure out in what lifetime or exactly what happened in childhood. Freud was a fraud. For him to tell people to go back to their childhood and constantly talk about it, your brain doesn't know the difference between what you are saying and what you are experiencing. So it's constantly just reiterating that false identity. So really what it becomes is grief with no source. It doesn't move. It just continues to like stagnate and continues to produce that identity. So that's why you start to like feel like something's wrong with you, but you can't necessarily pinpoint, right? And you don't have to resolve that mystery. What you have to do is release it from the body. And the thing is that these nails that we hang on this cross, those are the beliefs that we never question. Why? Because our nervous system gets stuck in fight and flight because of the stress of high levels of trauma, living our lifetime like that, which turns into complex post-traumatic stress. So then life just is normal this way. I used to live that way too, where constantly anxious, fluctuating between anxiety and depression. Definitely looked like I truly had all this confidence when deep down inside I doubted myself. I was the my worst enemy. Those were the nails that I hung myself from. Why? Because my nervous system was in fight and flight. There was no awareness. So it was always like, I'm too much, I'm not enough, I have to be the strong one. I'm the one that has to hold it together. All of that feels like the truth. It just feels normal because that's what you've always lived under. But none of that is your identity. These are masks that we wear to hide who we truly are because we feel that we're going to be rejected in society. We feel that if we have emotions and speak up, someone's going to say, "What's wrong with you? You always are falling apart," all these different things when the emotions are not the problem. They're just a moment in time and space. Awareness is the key here, but we have to rebuild our nervous system for that. So in Kundalini Yoga, we talk a lot about identity. In fact, it is literally what helped me release my addiction to alcohol. Because when I had all these false identities, I used alcohol as a coping mechanism. And I talk a lot about it in my book, Tending the Ancestral Garden, Reclaiming the Sanctuary. So in Kundalini Yoga, identity is not an idea in your head, it lives in your body. And actually, where it lives is in the navel point. And I'm going to show you from a perspective of Carl Jung, how he described this as well. Now, this was my own personal experience. And as a Kundalini Yoga therapist, also what I've learned. The navel point sits 2 to 3 inches right below your belly button, and it's deep inside. It's the seat of the third chakra called the Manipura, which means the city of jewels. Isn't that amazing? And think about it, pretty interesting that it's the city of jewels. But when you have all these falsified identities, you don't remember that you're a jewel, that you're the diamond. Why? Well, because the Manipura navel center, it's the fire center of the body. It governs your digestion, your metabolism, your will, your sense of who you are. So in the yogic map, the navel is also the reserve pool of your energy, the place your life force is stored before it actually zigzags through the spine. And think about it, this area also ignites your fascia system. The fascia is that collagen that looks like crystalline spider webs that connects all of your organs, all of your muscles. So if this is constantly contracted because it's waiting for the navel is contracting because the psoas is contracting because it's waiting for the next shoe to drop, then literally all your energy reserves, even if you get a lot of rest, even if you're eating the right foods, which most people are not if they're stressed out, your navel is not producing the vitality to keep all the other energies moving through your meridian system. What it's doing is it's using the energy to hold up the false identity. You're basically using your energy to survive because you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, even though there's no danger. But that's why Kundalini Yoga strengthens it through chanting, mantra, specific movements. Because when this navel center is strong, you are fearless. You're clear. Think about it. When you're going to talk to, like, for example, especially an animal, you speak from your navel, they hear you. To another human being, you speak from your navel, they listen. But if you're not in your navel, if you're an emotional wreck, you are thinking you need to defend yourself because somebody hurt your fragile identity of who you are, they're not going to hear. And you're going to create more karma. So we have to strengthen this navel point because it becomes weak and knocked off center through trauma. How? It's very easy to understand, actually. Your psoas muscle behind your pelvic area, what happens is you've been through trauma, abuse of any kind, neglect, mom was depressed growing up, dad was absent or depressed. Then what happens is in your body, your fascia, which is the crystalline energy, starts to store those memories. And then because it's piezoelectric, it sends signals to your then psoas, which then starts to contract. You could be in the middle of a vacation and it'll start to contract. And it'll do that throughout the lifetime. So then what happens is your spine, that's why a lot of people that have been through trauma have what is scoliosis, because their spine is not, it's a structural issue where it's not straight anymore. It's like offside. So then the energy moves and zigzags. Instead of zigzagging, it actually gets stuck underneath the navel. So that's why you don't breathe above your navel. And because you don't breathe above your navel, now this false identity is actually what is eliminate or prohibiting you from actually seeing clearly, thinking clearly, from being your best friend, your own best friend. Because the energy is being used to survive, to wear the mask. And there's actually a scientific study out there that shows that people that are masking, the mitochondria are suffering tremendously, which then leads to physical disease. Why? Because you're using all your energy to be someone you're not. So we use these practices to strengthen and to realign the spine so that the energy can move above the belly button and you can let go of the freaking cross. Shame, self-denial, second guessing, making yourself small. Though that's the cross at your navel. It's physical. The navel sits at the solar plexus, which is one of the densest bundles of nerves in your entire body. It's so dense, it's sometimes it's called the second brain. And this is where the gut feeling comes from, right? It's not a figure of speech. Your gut has its own web of neurons, and it is constantly in conversation with your brain through that vagus nerve. So when you say you knew something in your gut, you're like describing a real signal from this center. And your body's direct knowing lives here at the navel. But the problem is with chronic stress, and which starts from trauma, right? This lifetime, past lifetime, we lose our body's our ability to sense our body's signals. It's called interoception. It's like a sixth sense. And we all can do it. It's just that if you've lived under chronic stress, your body sends you signals. And instead of like, I'm anxious, it's telling you you're just thirsty. So then you're like, I'm anxious, I'm anxious. Or you start to think about the past because you think it has to do with the past, when in fact, maybe you didn't get enough sleep. Maybe you didn't get enough rest, right? Now, here's the part that most people leave out, and this is what changes everything. Your identity center is held in the body structurally. It's wrapped around your spine. It connects your upper body to your legs. It's a muscle called the psoas, right here. And that psoas, the deepest muscle in your core, it's wired directly into your survival response. So when you are threatened, the psoas contracts, like I've shared before, to curl you inward and to protect your soft center. So that's a job. That's a good design, isn't it? But the thing is you haven't released the memories from the fascia, which stores memory and sends signals to your body. The trauma then does not end when the threat ends, because then that means that your nervous system is shaped by all these generations and lifetimes where the danger keeps the psoas gripped. It never fully lets go. And a chronically contracted psoas right behind your pelvic area pulls on your lower spine, tips your pelvis, your whole structure lives out of alignment. You are, in the most literal sense, braced, curled around a threat that is not even in the room anymore. That's why it's so insane, right? We cannot talk our way out of it. So you're not even imagining that you feel small. Your spine is holding you small. And the distortion is not just in your beliefs, it's in your body. That's why you cannot think your way into a new identity. You cannot talk your way. And I'm sure you've tried it, right? You've tried doing the affirmations, and by the afternoon, you were back to the old self. Mantra is very different than an affirmation. Affirmation uses the English language. Mantra in Kundalini Yoga is a science of sound. There are particular sounds that are going to impact particular organs, particular meridian points. And that's what the practice is for, because Kundalini energy is simply your own life force at the fourth vertebrae, right here at the lower triangle. And when we can activate it safely through breath, through prana, through meditation, Then it's going to reach these higher centers. Then you're going to be able to learn to breathe above your belly button again. Now the practice re-educating also your nervous system. Hey, we're not in fight and flight. And also what it's doing is uh literally hydrating the fascia, which is the crystalline energy. That means that if it's getting hydrated, it's releasing memory, yes, which is why it's not all love and light when we are doing this work. But by the same token, by the release of memory, it's no longer sending the signals to your body, to the psoas, hey, something's wrong, something's gonna happen. Get ready. So then the spine finds its structure again. And then that navel point can finally hold the truth of who you are. That's why we don't believe that we are created in the highest image of God. And I've always been a student also of Carl Jung, especially when I found out that he himself wrote a book on Kundalini Yoga. And a lot of what he talks about psychologically, I can understand it as a Kundalini Yoga therapist physically in the body. And this is why I like to use a lot of his teachings so that we can have other perspectives to truly be able to understand that. But Carl Jung, he arrived at the same place that I arrived in from a Kundalini Yoga therapist perspective, from a different direction. In 1932, Carl Jung gave a series of lectures, and he was doing lectures on Kundalini Yoga. And they were published in the book called The Psychology of Kundalini Yoga. And he took the entire chakra system, which is a lot of people say there's seven chakras. In Kundalini Yoga, we know that there's eight. The eighth chakra is your auric field. And the auric field is comprised of your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions. This month inside of the Sovereign Citrate Sanctuary, we're working on the aura, specific meditations and kriyas, so that we can connect to the inner child. Because there's never been anything wrong with your inner child. People say you got to fix your inner child, you got to heal your inner child, you got to protect your inner child. That is not the truth. What you have to do is reorganize the energy field so that the splinter psyches, which are false identities that we're talking about here, no longer run the show. And that's an energetic component. That's what I'm talking back with the psoas. But what Carl Jung did is he took the chakra system and he took it very seriously as a map of how human beings actually develop. And the chakra system, as you know, with the navel, we're talking about the Manipura, it's seven, and then the aura number eight, and they're subtle energy fields. They act like brains that process information. So when Jung actually reached the third chakra, the navel, here's what he said. He actually called the Manipura also the fire center, the place where a person is, in his words, born into a new existence. He said it is the center of the identification with God, the place where you first begin to feel yourself as part of something divine. The father of modern psychology, Carl Jung, studying the yogic body, put the birth of your true identity at the navel point, the exact place Kundalini Yoga already called the seat of the self. So two different maps that are drawn here, a world apart, both marking the same spot on the body. And I didn't know this until after I experienced it myself. I read Carl Jung's book after I had already released the alcohol addiction. But when I read his book, I was like, oh, he's saying what I experienced too. And Jung gave us three words that make this usable. The first is the persona. From the mask an actor wore on stage. So the persona is the version of you that gets through the day, that says the acceptable things, that keeps the peace. Everyone has one. The danger is not having a mask. The danger is forgetting you are wearing one and believing the mask is your face. Basically, what that is the ego, which is not bad. It's just an untrained mind. The second word is the shadow. Everything you were taught to hide in order to be loved. The anger that was not allowed. The power that was too much, right? God's power, because it's not even your power. The desires that were shamed. So you did not destroy those parts. You buried them at the navel in that fire center. And Jung said it is the fire of Manipura that finally burns through and forces you to face what you buried. And then the third is the self that we call the self with the capital S. That's the true center that was there before the world told you who to be. It's so sad that think about yourself as a parent, But most parents say, go become someone. Imagine if your parents told you, go become who you are. We wouldn't be here talking about these things, right? But they didn't know who they were. And it's not their fault, right? They didn't know who they were because of their own traumatic experiences. They didn't know who they were because of colonization. My God, it's so sad what they did to Native Americans, to indigenous people. You're no longer allowed to practice your rituals, your spirituality, anything that's connecting you back to your roots. Like they literally had their identity stripped because it was through those rituals, through those practices that they connected with who they truly were, the highest sons and daughters of God. So all those things that happen to your parents, to the world, we're not here to blame, but we're also not here to deny that those were also the things that continue to occur, which is why it's so important more than ever for you to understand that you're the most advanced technology. And Jung called that the work of a whole life individuation. So that slow return to the self. It is about bringing the things that are in the subconscious mind to the conscious. And it's the same journey that yogis mapped up the spine. You were whole first. The masks came afterwards. The buried parts are not gone. And the healing is not becoming someone new. It is the fire at your navel burning off everything that was never you. And how? Through acceptance. Once you can accept your shadows instead of deny them, you will transcend them. But if you're constantly in victim mode, or because your nervous system is in fight and flight, and you make a mistake, you go unconscious and then you project that out, you're back in the karmic loop. So people project out their pain and they turn into victims and then they think they're being attacked, not because they're bad people, it's because truly they are being completely governed by a false identity, by these masks, and they forgot who they truly are. Now, there's a lot of prophets around this because I want you to understand very clearly that this is not done by accident. Identity, and there's even universities that have always studied this. Identity has always been manipulated because if a woman does not know who she is, she can be sold anything and ruled by anyone. Colonization understood this. You do not fully conquer a village or a society by taking their land. You conquer them by taking their name for themselves. You outlaw the language. You forbid the ceremony. You rename the gods and the mountains and the children. I'm going to go convert you into evangelical Christianity because you're a sinner. Horrific. How could that even be the truth? Jesus Christ was not born at the beginning of time. So that means that all the people before Jesus Christ were all sinners and something's wrong with them. So that means that people from India, because they have other religions, that something's wrong with them. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So within a few generations, the people forget who they are. And the people who have forgotten who they are, they don't resist, right? They're victims because they no longer remember there's anything to defend. So identity theft was a strategy, not a side effect. That same wound comes down your line and your lineage. It's why so many of us were raised to make ourselves smaller, quieter, more agreeable, to survive in a world that was literally built not for us, those that are living in our truth. So your grandmother's survival became your instinct, her hiding her ability to heal others using herbs, no, because the religion didn't let her. And then we have pop culture, which finished the job in so many ways. Advertisements, how you need to dress, how your hair needs to be comparing yourself to others. First, it tells you that you're not enough. Then it sells you the things that's going to fix you, right? So this entire machine depends on you not knowing your own worth. Because a woman who knows exactly who she is has nothing left to be bamboozled by. And I'm not talking conspiracies here. It's a business model. Your uncertainty is the product. And it doesn't cost you anything to meditate. You can go to any one of my YouTube channel or videos here, and you can pick one of my meditations and you can start today so that you can reclaim your sovereignty and release the cross from the navel. Because when you do the work of coming back to your true identity, you are actually remembering who you are. And that is what I mean by healing 7 generations before and after you. And I'm not saying that you will not recognize or become aware of the things that this illusion of Maya are consisting of. And you're going to call them out and you're probably even going to use your sword, but you're not going to be collapsed by them. You're not going to continue to wear masks because are afraid to be authentically you. You're going to understand that emotions are just a moment in time and space and they're not who you are. You're going to understand the ways that you're made to feel guilty, not enough, or like you're behind. And you're going to create your own path. You're going to create your own reality because that's what we reclaim our sovereignty for. Now, going back to Kundalini Yoga, that's why we chant Sat Nam. When you start practicing Kundalini Yoga, you start saying Sat Nam, Sat Nam. I started saying that. All the people, all the habits, all the things that were not in alignment to who I know myself to be fell apart and they will continue to fall apart. And that's not a bad thing. Why would I want to be in relationship with friends that I aligned with when I was in my very toxic times? It's not that I'm better now, it's just that we're not in a frequency match. Same thing with your relationships, beautiful women. If you are doing this healing work and your partner is triggered because you met your partner when you were in your identity of the wounded child, either the partner is going to level up and change their own frequency, or that relationship is going to end. And the good news is that you don't even have to take it personal. You don't even have to think it's about yourself. It was a frequency situation. We met because our frequencies matched when I was in my false identity of I'm not good enough. I'm doing this work. My nervous system has changed. Of course, my thoughts, feelings, and emotions are going to change, which means my auric field is going to change, which means my frequency is going to change. And if you cannot level up to that frequency, I am going to trigger you. You're going to trigger your partner. So might as well let the relationship end because you'll be protected from that. You'll be protected from the fact that you're no longer in a relationship where the other person is still wearing false masks, where the other person is still acting out of their pain. So I know it sounds harsh, but truly, Sat Nam, chanting Sat Nam is going to eliminate anything that is not in alignment with your truth because it's a frequency, it's a technology. Sat means truth. Nam means identity. Truth is my identity. It's what we call the seed mantra, a biji mantra, which means it plants the truth of who you are directly into your consciousness like a seed into the soil. That's what I mean by tending the ancestral garden, reclaiming the sanctuary, right? Now, the mechanism, because this part is very important. Everything in this world vibrates. It's a frequency. Your fear has a frequency. Your inherited smallness has a frequency. And sound is the fastest way to change the frequency you are living at. When you chant Sat Nam, your tongue strikes the roof of your mouth. On the upper palate, there are 84 meridian points. And every time your tongue taps them, it sends a signal straight to the hypothalamus. That's the control center of your brain. That's where memory is restored. The hypothalamus then directs your pituitary, your master gland. And then the pituitary commands the pineal and the rest of your glandular system. So look at that. Follow the chain. Your tongue moves, and at the end of the chain, your hormones shift. And this is how chanting revitalizes the glandular system and reestablishes glandular equilibrium. Because we're not just using the English language like affirmations, you're pressing keys on the control panel, that's mantra, of your own chemistry. And by changing the sounds you make, you change your glands and you change the way they secrete. And your glands are what set your baseline mood, your stress level, your sense of safety, your whole sense of self. And there is a way to actually feel it. You can begin the sat and let the sound rise from the base of your spine up through every center, all the way to the top of your head. And you close it with T at the crown. Sat, the tongue kissing the upper palate. Then Nam. You let the sound move out past your fascia, past your skin, into the quantum field, into the energy, into the lattice. And that field is your aura. the very body we've been working on this month inside the Sovereign Sister Sanctuary. So Satnam runs this entire circuit. It rises through the spine, it changes your glands, it seals this beautiful auric field. And with repetition, something happens. And that's the whole point. At first, you're chanting it, you're doing it. It's not all love and light because your fascia is being hydrated and then memories are being released. So all of a sudden you start getting really angry. You start feeling very upset and start to cry, maybe even. You didn't do anything wrong. Your nervous system finally felt safe to feel something that you had been suppressing for a long time. That is the cross. So you're washing the dishes, and the truth of who you truly are quietly starts to vibrate inside of your cells. And right there at that moment, you have this coming connection to what they would call to a higher power, to who you truly are. And even if it's for 1 second, your life changes completely because true identity gets built through the release of these emotional blockages in the navel point, all connected to the fascia, the nervous system, and the brain. And when we look at this from the Christ consciousness perspective, Yogananda and the teachings of Jesus Christ, Yogananda taught that your true identity will never be that small self. It's the Christ within. It's not a religion. It's the realization that there is a beautiful God that loves you and that you make mistakes all the time and you go unconscious all the time. But that by you having the capacity in your nervous system to bring them to God instead of running away from them and instead of projecting them, that you yourself will remember how sacred you are. And that Christ consciousness is the same divine intelligence that moved through Jesus and it's seated in every one of us. It's not just Jesus. Krishna, Mary Magdalene, lots of amazing teachers. So when Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you, he wasn't just trying to be poetic. He was naming your highest identity and telling you, hey, you know where to find it. Not outside of you, not when you die, inside of you now. Why? Because all of us were made in the image of God. Like just your fascia network is like miraculous. Like your fascia literally crystalline. It's actually been scientifically proven it communicates with other fascias. Like we are miracles. It's not just the birth of Jesus Christ. Your birth was a miracle, and you forget. We forget because of the cross in the navel, because of the nervous system, because of the brain wiring. And you are made in the image of God. You are the light. It is the awareness looking out through your eyes right now. That is the part of you that was never wounded. And isn't it beautiful that your eyes are the one thing that never changes as you become an adult, as you grow? There's a divine image in you that has been sitting where you have to reclaim that sanctuary. And it's done through meditation. The inner child work that we've done this month in the sanctuary was not about us all remembering all the bad things that happened to in childhood. No, we're doing shadow work for sure. But you don't have to remember what happened. You have to remember you're the light. So with all the work that we do inside the sanctuary is reminder you're the light. Reminder you're the light. Why? Because your shadows are going to be triggered. You're going to be like, if you only knew what I did, if you only knew how I yelled at this person, if you only knew this. Yeah, we all do that. And that doesn't change the fact that God authored you, that God decided to have an experience through you. We'll never change that. That untouched wholeness, it's not just some kind of, oh, that's so nice. What a sweet idea. It is your divine identity. And when you know that God moves through you, my God, you walk differently, you act differently, you eat differently, you vibe differently. It's a complete change of consciousness, which is what is the biggest revolution that is happening right now. The science proves what scripture has always talked about. Your cells emit light. It's measured. Biophoton emission. An ultra weak light release by living tissue, faint but real, documented in laboratories, biophoton emission. So you're not standing in the light, you're giving it off. You are at the level of your cells, luminous, and God is experiencing herself through all of your cells. Going back to fascia, fascia, the connective tissue that wraps every muscle, every organ, every nerve, all the way to your brain, your feet. For a long time, we just called it packaging material and we ignored it. We were so wrong. Fascia is a communication network. It carries tension, it carries signals, memory. It responds to what you feel. That's why the yogis, the acupuncturists, they mapped thousands of years ago with the microscope, the meridian points. So your meridian is a river where the emotions move through. The fascia is like the riverbank. And you understand that emotions get stuck if there's no movement. And movement, I'm not talking about going to the gym because that's not enough. There's a lot of people that go to the gym and have not very good mental health because the gym only moves the physical body, sometimes an aspect of the mind. What I'm talking about is the inner hydration, the flow through meditation. Your body emits light, it's wrapped in a living web that carries it, laid out along the exact lines the ancients called the pathways of life force. So when the scripture says you're the light of the world, we're not just talking all new age jambalaya love and light. Your own tissue is telling the same truth. We are pure light moving through a body built to carry it. Your body is enlightenment. This is where enlightenment happens. So the only thing that dims it is you not reclaiming your sanctuary and the bracing. So you got to release the brace that your psoas is doing unconsciously that shuts off the light. You got to release all of the grief, the anger. And then there's layers to this because the first step to this is realization. Hey, I am angry. Hey, I am upset. Hey, I am mad at you, God. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the first step. Because once we get to that first step and then we actually do the work of meditation to experience God within us, everything changes. Because when we know God moves through us, when your identity is no longer the inherited fear by basically the inherited fear patterns, all these different things that you are actually the divine light, when you're living from the navel point instead of the mask, everything changes. And it shows up in the smallest ways at first. You stop performing for people who really didn't earn the fact that you needed to be wasting energy. You stop shrinking to keep a room comfortable. You start speaking your truth. You stop asking permission to be yourself because you finally understand, hey, you know what? There's no higher authority to ask but me, within me. You take up full space. You're not there to prove anything either. It's because you're no longer pretending to be smaller than you are. You give without emptying. You're no longer a savior because you're no longer giving to earn your worth. You don't need validation. You don't need approval. You protect and you protect through the spiritual woman, a matriarch. This is what we're building with the sovereign sister sanctuaries, a matriarch in person. She goes from, I need to save everyone to I'm the protector. This is the whole movement. From the woman who saves to one who is rooted in who she is, her identity. And there's no matriarch without it. And when you know God is moving through you, oh my God, you stop straining so hard because you're no longer the one carrying life alone. When you're so tired, it's because you're doing life alone. So it's about becoming a channel, a vessel for the divine. It's about you understanding that you can't talk your way out of these things, that you have to structurally change the body, the mind, and connect back to your soul. And that's how seven generations get honored behind you and forward. That's how seven generations recrown themselves as the rose. And that's what we do inside of this community. You're not here, oh, to just be in a better mood or to never have emotions. You're here to remember and uncoil your potential, to remember that you are the light, to remember that beyond all those false identities, you are as God created you. And so, as we close out this month that we've been talking all about ancestral gifts inside of our live TikToks, I want to remind you that you are a gift. And that you becoming a vessel is allowing the nervous system to become re-educated, the brain to become rewired, the fascia to become rehydrated, so that you can truly allow God to move through you. So if this is already resonating for you, I welcome you to join us inside the Sovereign Sisterhood Sanctuary. Right now, we do have a bulk package where if you purchase my book, Tending the Ancestral Garden, you actually get also a month's membership inside of the Sovereign Sisterhood Sanctuary. So you can actually really come into the community and integrate the teachings of Kundalini Yoga therapy and the second coming of Christ from the teachings of Yogananda. You can also join us directly at the Sovereign Sisterhood Sanctuary and join us through a monthly membership where you can absolutely cancel at any time and try it out for yourself. Because the most important work is the experience. That is what takes you from a reader to an actual teacher. The other thing is that remembering that we are already launching our in-person sanctuaries, and those are completely complimentary to all women. We are launching them now in 6 different cities. We already had our very first in-person sanctuaries circles: El Paso, Texas; Chihuahua, Mexico; Los Angeles, California. We also have Rancho Cucamonga, Phoenix, Arizona, and Los Gatos, California. So please go to sovereignsistersanctuary.com to find your local sanctuary and sign up so you can join us on these monthly Sovereign Sister Sanctuary circles, which are all about the return of the matriarch and reclaiming our own sanctuary for 7 generations before and after us. And if your sanctuary is not there yet, sign up to find a local facilitator. We are launching a new set of also sanctuaries throughout the nation and maybe even expanding more into Mexico. So stay tuned. And I just want to thank you all because if you're listening to this, you obviously are remembering who you are. You obviously are on this path of self-realization, and it is an honor to be in community with high priestess like all of you. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you for liking. Thank you for sharing. And please do leave me a comment here below in the section and letting me know how this actually resonated for you. I would also love to get your feedback on some of the things that are coming up in your own consciousness, in your own expansion, so that we can create more podcast episodes around them. Thank you for you, and I look forward in seeing you inside of the Sovereign Sister Sanctuary. I'll see you next week. Sadhana.